will have interviewed each and everyone who, one way or the other, would have been related. That's one process. And secondly, the one was awaiting, and it's unfortunate that the process now for the forensic audit is going to be a while before we get the results. But with the actions and the report, draft report that that I got from the two-person DDG team, one is comfortable and ready to can act. That's why I think my last bullet that I included this morning to say, then I've got full authority and a fuller picture of what kind of reorganization, what kind of reorganization will I do or will I make on the IFMS project itself. That involves a wide ranging of issues, including what I said earlier when I was responding to Honorable Boy, that we, for instance, there is a process now, because I said there are challenges even now as we implement IFMS, and that essentially just made me stop the payment. There's pointers that then justify the actions that we have to take on key individuals, on that will help us rectify the processes, that will help us, and as I said, indicate, reorganize the project management office. So there is evidence now that will give me the authority to act in a way that I think will be appropriate, in line with recognizing that this program has got challenges, recognizing also that even the Auditor General, in terms of draft audit findings, has identified some of the challenges that really give me justification for me to can act.
All right. Okay.
Thank you for that response, DG. But maybe just want to add that maybe the DG will keep us informed in terms of that process. Chairperson, I think my last follow-up question will be to SITA. Chair, you know, I just need to be assisted. Maybe I don't understand it correctly. Chair, I just want to get the role of SITA in terms of project management with this whole project, or in terms of your oversight. To me, sir, Chairperson, sitting here, I feel like SITA didn't do a proper oversight. So I just need to be convinced some more so that I understand what was your role. Because I think when I do the calculations, I think SITA spent almost like 280 million on IFMS 1, and which the whole project really, since it has been stopped, for me, it doesn't seem like there was value for money. So convince me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think the role of SITA is shown on slide 18 of the National Treasury presentation, particularly the blue blocks.
I have seen it. Just explain it to me.
Yes.
What is it?
So there were parts of it where SITA was doing the software development work, and then there were two parts there, which one is the financial management, and the other one is the one that is called ADE, where SITA contracted external parties to do the work. And I think what my colleague has just mentioned is that some of those modules there are working at National Treasury and DPSA, and some of them were never completed. The SITA could have done better. We could have done better and provided better leadership during that period. That's all I can say. Right now, the overall project management is with National Treasury, and we are doing what has been designated for us, which is the hosting. Thank you.
Okay. Comrade.
Chairperson, I understand SITA could have done better. What is the purpose of SITA if SITA could have done better? It means SITA doesn't do their work. It's not fair enough to say that SITA could have done better. Then it means even next year, even on this IFMS 2, you're still gonna say SETA could have done better. It's not convincing. What is it that you do? What is it that you are being paid for? Maybe they might not respond.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe they might not respond.
No, I hear you. No, it's fine, CEO. I think she's merely expressing a disappointment. You see, because to merely say SETA could have done better does not give us comfort. You know, doesn't give us comfort. Doesn't change anything. Did I see your hand up, Comrade Kuno? Yes.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I must say that I am disappointed. On the way we got this presentation, or the way it was presented to us, and the way everybody has been answering. National Treasury is the key component, or should I say the key department in governance, and I don't think they're being exemplary. I'll start with the Chief Procurement Officer. He came and appeared to Scopa twice, if not more. And he really convinced us that he is doing a good job. And that's why most of the time when departments come and appear before Scopa, we will then ask them about what he advised us on. But the same Chief Procurement Officer failed to help or advise his own department. What was his role? What is the role of the Chief Procurement Officer in the procurement of IFMS? What was their input in terms of helping with the process? They could have seen that we're going to have problems going further, but they didn't. And yet they are advising other departments, and I understand from the last time that it's not only national, but they're even going provincially. So if they can make such a big mistake with a billion rand, which might sound, like peanuts to you because you're dealing with billions and you think that a billion rand is not a lot of money. How does that happen, Chairperson? Thanks.
Chief Officer, the Chief Procurement Officer, were they involved in the IMFS processes?
Chair, in terms of the process, they would not have been involved in procuring services because it is the Treasury that will procure, and its own internal supply chain processes that will have procured all the services.
I think what she wants to find out is, was there any role they played, any advisory, any monitoring role? Since they monitor everybody.
Chair, not to the best of my knowledge, no. But what I also did as part of the investigation that satisfies me, I've requested that they should go into each and every payment of the payments that were made to check. One was to check the procurement of, the process that National Treasury undertook to secure all your BITS technologies, Apex, everyone. They are doing that work for me. Secondly, I've asked them now to check from where they sit, where this payment legitimate or not. Just as a layer that will satisfy me once all of these processes are unfolding, so that I also, from where they sit, satisfy myself that Chief Procurement Office is helping me out. So I'm awaiting that work from them.
Chairperson, the Chief Procurement Officer has got standards and procedures on how they deal with different projects. The example that I forgot his name. Kenny Brown. He made an example of a service provider and a government doing the same thing. For instance, if a service provider wants to build a building, they can be charged 2 million rands. But when it comes to government, for the same things, same space, they will charge almost 2 billion rands. He was making that example. And he said he went to an extent of going to find out why are they doing that to government. And they said government takes long to pay. That's why they charge so much. So if the chief procurement officer was involved from the beginning, because they even go, I mean, as the overseer, they check even before there's a big project in this magnitude. Before it happens, then they will be able to advise you that these people are overcharging and these ones are not overcharging. So that on slide 31, the problems that are there, you know, excessive expenditures of 145 million for 5-year period, you know, what you have spent there, it's a lot of money. So if the chief procurement officer was involved, the one who sits in National Treasury as part of his office, if he cannot help within the National Treasury, how then can we say that that they will be able to help other departments and provinces as well if they cannot do, the charity begins at home. Why were they not involved?
Chair, I take the honorable member's point that, you know, they should have been involved. And I also take guidance from her that the scope that I've asked them to do work on should be a bit expanded a little bit in terms of going into this project, as much as it's after the fact. But we can then at an appropriate time make that information available once they are complete with their work on this project, so that we can help me further how to strengthen the project moving forward and its implementation.
Okay. Thanks, Chairperson. Then is there any way, based on what you have answered, is there any way we can hold the IFMS 2 so that we make sure that the mistakes that happened when we procured IFMS 1, it's not repeated? Like involve everyone wherever that you are. Is it impossible to stop it, and let's make sure that processes are being followed the way they should?
Chair, I would strongly advise that we even consider stopping it, because the cost will be much bigger and much more detrimental in terms of where the process is. But what we what we need to do is to further strengthen the implementation side of the project, strengthen the oversight role that this steering committee should play on the project, and also strengthen, and Chair must be open and blunt here. I told the team a few days ago that I'm supposed to be chairing a steering committee in terms of diagram that is on page 3, slide number 3. On slide number 3, you have IFMS steering committee. And when I checked what is this, and people explained, they said I'm the chair of that committee. And then I asked, you know, then I saw a meeting being arranged of this committee. And then I requested in the meeting, I picked up that the last time, and because I said for 3 months, from 15th of May, when I started acting till today, there's never been a steering committee, and I guess it's 3 months. For 10 billion, for 4.3 billion or 2.2 billion, at least we should have met once at least. Mm. But then in inquiring, I found that the meeting last took place in November last year of the steering committee. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not here to, you know, sugarcoat. There are problems. And I'm prepared, as I committed earlier to the question, to get to the bottom of this project and actually make sure that it works. Make sure that at least the 2.2 billion that we have already spent, we can get value for it, including the balance that we're going to spend in order to strengthen this. So stopping the project, honorable member, will be detrimental, and we might justify the fruitless and wasteful expenditure that we already are talking to with the AG. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. The AGSA on slide 36, the finding of the AGSA 2.3 worth of delayed payments to AGSA. I mean, I would expect this to happen in municipalities. I know that there are lots of municipalities that cannot pay Auditor General of South Africa. And the problem with a big department like you not paying AGSA, it means they won't be able to do their work. So what happened? Why was the AGSA not paid? If you can have all your Ernst and Young, which the chairperson had a concern with last week, that why is it only Ernst and Young, a company here in South Africa? Why are we always involving them? Why are you not involving others? And you find your own being not paid. What is the problem?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is one of the 54 findings, and it was unnecessary. We shouldn't have. That's why I think all management institutes said, these are being monitored on a daily basis. If you owe someone pay, at least we've got 30-day rule, and it should be to anybody that we owe, and it shouldn't be. That's why I use the word lapses. These were unnecessary in the way this finding. I mean, we should have done much better. And I think the project management office is on top of this, and I don't think it should ever happen again, that because the CFO did not sign, or the fact that the CFO must sign, because there are some findings whereby the CFO did not sign or someone did not approve. But under normal circumstances it happens, but effectively you want all clear payments to be cleared before they are made, and so these lapses, we've noted them. We've discussed them internally, and we think it's critical that we don't repeat such mistakes. And, and this talks to the broader role, that if Treasury is failing on these things, then this is a serious area of concern.
Yep.
Why is it difficult? It's good that the Minister of Treasury is here. Kind of National Treasury, Minister of Finance is here. Why is it difficult for officials of government to collaborate with other departments in government? Like you heard that Deloitte, because is it Tush? Yeah, they've been contracted. Some of the service providers that you have contracted, you should have used our own here in government, our own agencies that we have. Why do we rush to leave them and go and use others? Why is it a problem? Why are we overusing the service providers? And when are we going to put an end to them? These contractors, we have them year in, year out, and some of these contracts, they are unending. So it means forever we will still have these people at our back. We talk about economic transformation, Minister, every day, as politicians. But we fail to do it when it comes to, our own day-to-day work, implementing and making sure that we deal away with your Ernst and Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and all those people, because there are millions of South Africans who are not working. There are graduates who have their certificates. I remember in my constituency, somebody who had a social worker was applying to be an administrator in my constituency. That's how bad it is. And yet, you find a CEO here saying, yeah, we have these service providers. And they even call them boutique. What did you say about boutique? The gentleman said boutique houses.
And you had a different concept of boutique.
Yeah. So we have boutique, they have boutique skills. Why are we playing around with South Africans?
All right. All right. No. I said 3 or 4 questions so that we can. Yeah.
Yeah. The minister, when he comes, he will answer to that overusing of service providers.
Consultants.
Of consultants. SITA, one thing good about us as members of Scopa, we listen very carefully. And, I don't know who advised you to say, yeah, we have seen it's a problem, we'll deal with that. That's the same answers that you gave when we were with Correctional Service at Old Assembly Chamber. You gave the same answers. We are not here to play. You see, we are not bored. We didn't call you because we were bored. And I think, Chairperson, we need to have SITA coming here, not SITA with Correctional Service or SITA coming with Treasury on IFMS. SITA must come here because there are lots of problems with SITA. That's why some of our departments, Chairperson, are not even using them because they cannot deliver. They are not committed at all. That's why they can answer the way that they're answering. There are millions of rands that we have used inappropriately, so you cannot even account to them. And the overuse again of service providers. What you have said here, the way you were answering some of my colleagues earlier on, you're actually saying there's nothing that you are doing.
Let's call them consultants.
The consultants.
Because service providers, it's almost as if we need services, we must go to consultants. It's a clever way of using words. Yeah, continue. These are consultants.
Chairperson, we cannot talk about capacity blanketly, so we need to qualify or quantify these capacity problems that you have. And I need to have a report on all these consultants that you have contracted to do some work for you. When are those contracts going to expire? And again, if we could have a report on your skills audit of SITA, so that we can check from the report, the skills audit, and check it as opposed to your service providers or contractors that you're having outside of your SITA. Check if we can marry them together. And looking at this, Chairperson, are we going to achieve what we have said in the NDP?
All right. I'm taking it, they are taking it as food for thought. All right, Comrade Boy, but before you, let me check the Chairperson of the Audit Committee.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, from my side, as the Chair of the Oversight Committee, I just wanted to echo what the DG has said. We do have challenges in this project, and I also would like to assure the committee that from an oversight point of view, out of the internal audit report, there were 2 processes that came out. One process was obviously intervention by management to rectify those weaknesses in the internal controls. The other process is consequence management, which is basically the forensic investigation. As far as the forensic investigation, as I've already alluded, Deloitte has been terminated. There's a new process underway. The terms of reference have been crafted and will also be expanded on the initial one to cover areas that have already been identified by the Auditor General. So from our side, Chair, we do acknowledge that there are challenges. There's also an increase in terms of specific focus from a risk assessment point of view, where from the first phases, risk was basically looked at comprehensively with other programs within Treasury. There has been a new process now whereby risk assessment or risk committee specifically focuses on IFMS projects. From the committee, we also see IFMS as a standalone, just to make sure that specific focus is put on it, just to make sure that all these areas we don't lose focus on.
Right.
Thank you,
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. 3 questions, and then we'll move
No,
on.
no, it's my last one.
Okay.
Or 2.
Okay.
The last one will be directed to the minister.
Great.
The Oracle debug and related to licensing, how does that one work? We spend a lot of money. I hear, Honorable Tim, hearing that you are saying this project is 4 billion. But this is why, for your own benefit, sir, you better take the whole project and calculate all the monies going to the World Bank, how much would it cost us, dealing with the different entities, even what she's talking about, dealing with the auditor, what is this thing, Deloitte and Touch, and even the different, providers who became authority to themselves. It's a little bit not a good picture that the internal audit is painting. So I do hope that we'll get in detail how much it is. Minister, now this one can be answered by him. The internal audit says, besides what Tim has been trying, and I go along with him to say that it seems like in our work we'd have to get this cabinet memorandum as Scopa. Now what the internal audit says, it says during the review we noted that the cabinet memorandum contains the approved overall budget for the IFMS project of 4.3 billion. However, there was no supporting documentation, records or financial analysis included to justify the expenditure line items related to the 4.3 billion. Now that should be shocking, man, that cabinet in itself endorses a document of that nature and pushes money to this project. How does that happen? Can cabinet guide parliament that how does it make such nature of decisions where there's no total breakdown, line items, and a project that has so much taken since 2005 up until today, and cabinet just pushes money towards that direction? What we are talking about here, 4 ministers that have presided over this particular project, 2 presidents that have presided over this particular project, but no result. No results, no consequences. Bezathi uhlengwa kukwagogo la. Udla imali nje kamnandi nje. Kuyatyiwa nje la. How can cabinet not have seen anything wrong with IFMS 1 and agreed on it, and agreed on 4.3 billion with no motivation, with nothing explaining? That's why, I mean, the different service providers were just chowing. It's Christmas here. How does it happen in normal life? How does cabinet operate for itself to have arrived at such a decision? Was it so much in love with the auditor, with the Director General Fuzani, that they just sat there and they just listen and then endorse the decision? How can cabinet allow this type of an expenditure to go unnoticed? Now we're at 4.2 billion, but nothing was written as a supporting document that how does this expenditure, I mean, like, how is it going to be happening? How can we run a government of this nature? There's something wrong with us. Maybe, Minister, you'll give us better insight. How does such decision come to cabinet? And then cabinet just says, no, 4.3 billion, how can cabinet come to such a decision? And it's quite clear that, Chairperson, it opens up the areas of interest. We can't have 4 ministers presiding over one project and they themselves not to be held accountable. Even at the stage that quite clearly 1 billion has been spent and there's no accountability. And the plan is forwarded to cabinet, nobody seems to care, you see. I like what Tim was asking. 2005, there's nobody here to account. But what I'm saying is, in government, the people who must be held accountable for this particular development. Can't be 4 ministers ignoring such a situation. This is the 4th minister, if I'm right. 3 of them are outside, are former ministers. How do we come to that type of an environment where the expenditure is not explained? We harass departments every day when they don't have a business plan. That how did you make that decision? But it's shocking. 400 and something billion has been agreed by cabinet without itself providing evidence of how that money must be spent. I would leave it to the DG because you won't be able to answer it. Maybe I'll solicit some understanding from the cabinet member that how did this happen? If it doesn't, he must refer us somewhere where we can get this. We can go to the leader of government, write a letter, ask him to be able to provide us that how does such a decision occur? And nobody cares in cabinet.
All right. That was probably a more appropriate closing question because then it pulls everything together to political responsibility and accountability. Before you respond, Comrade Mills, just a quick one from my side. And I think I would also want your reflections on it. Here it's an important program for the whole of government, national and provincial. But the way it is implemented, it is so shambolic. 1 billion rands later, you realize, no, this thing won't work. Because you had your hybrid model where you have your commercial off the shelf and you call it bespoke, which means you will customize it. And so it goes back to what Honorable Prataseth asked, decision making. Well, this is about decision making. Was this just a thumbsuck which you only realize at the end that this thing won't work or what? It's quite shocking that would come to that. With the seriousness of National Treasury and the supposed skills at SITA. I think that's bad. Well, as if that's not bad enough. Now, you create the project management office with the objective of improving project management. And look where we are. We're here simply because that project management office that was supposed to improve project management arising out of IFMS 1 has its own challenges, and you, DG, now have had to take that step of now stopping payments because it appears there is no certainty about what is happening. And you said this is a complex process, but what do? You allocate a person here, Bodever, I hope I have the surname correct, who is assigned elsewhere, and she only gives 50% of her time to the project and the other 50% of her time to her other work. To such an important and complex project coming out of a 1 billion rands failure, you want to get it right. But you allocate the head of that project, somebody who has divided focus, and somebody who, if I heard you correctly, is not an ICT specialist, nor a financial systems person. That's the person who must head that project. Just at that level, just those decisions, whoever it was who took those decisions, how does it make sense? Well, she is half there or half not there. And then what do you see? You find all these payments. Because now there are no controls, no one to monitor. And what does the internal audit finds? The monitoring of costs against contracted amounts with service providers was done informally by the National Treasury team. So it was done informally. Easy. As if that was not enough, discussions were held with service providers to ensure that they were also monitoring project costs, which means consultants must now monitor themselves. They must monitor themselves. That's what it says. Now, when you go to the next page, it says, it is important to stress that due to the limited financial resources for the project, limited financial resources for the project, reliance, Comrade Minister, hope you underline that word, reliance was placed on service providers' own internal controls and quality assurance. So essentially consultants, it's a consultant's paradise. They are on their own. They can do as they please. And thus you get the findings that are in the presentation, DG, that you have made. You go to slide, can't see properly these days, slide 35, the last bullet point, an amount of 7 million paid for not clear deliverables. And Lindy is there. She's the one monitoring this thing. 7 million paid, not clear deliverables. So on what basis was this amount paid? And these things are happening in National Treasury. You know, not in the EPC, in National Treasury. I don't want to give an example of a department because then it will be like I'm undermining them. But I'm saying 7 million rands later, it has been approved until pay. But there are not clear deliverables. And KPMG, they were paid amounts 2.5 million and 2.2 million, but the reports that they were supposed to do were not finalized. Lindy is there. She's monitoring this process. And KPMG is asked to do some ad hoc work with no agreement in place. It was just given. And it's interesting that with BIS Technologies, a service level agreement at the tune of 39 million was signed, when it was actually supposed to be 28 million. Now the question is, who signed that SLA? Fine, it was cancelled, but what happened to the official who signed that SLA? You know, I do know that BIS Technologies, trading as Abacus, has captured treasure. If we're talking state capture in other entities, this one has been there at National Treasury for more than 10 years and getting contracts left, right, and center. And here they are. They're supposed to get a contract of 28 million and then somebody signs it at 39 million. So it's fine, it was cancelled. But who is that official? What has happened to that official? But what does that mean? How many other such SLAs have been signed? Because then I think from this side, we're starting to be worried now. If this happened with IFMS project, what other many projects within National Treasury suffer this kind of lapses, if one may use that word? When you go to slide 32, okay. let me leave that one. I think if you go back to to all those findings, then one thing that comes through is that payment was made without looking at the work that has been done, or contracts were not in place, or service level agreement deliverables were not there, timesheets to justify amounts were not there. And I'm just saying, DG, if this was an important project which has just emerged from the embarrassment of not coming through, you would have expected that it would be handled much, much differently. And you said there are only 5 officials from National Treasury. Now, if you have a project of that magnitude, of that importance, and then you allocate 5 people, then the conclusion I can come to is that then the rest are consultants. And as such, then they just do as they please. So where are we? I think taking us back to where Comrade Boy was, that Comrade Minister, how do we say that not just National Treasury, but that government actually takes this project seriously? How do we say that? What evidence is there beside what is on paper at the level of implementation? So, DG, you are settled with this hot potato. It's on your laps now. And you are the one who must make the important decisions going forward. Clearly, you have been brought here, spend the whole afternoon, because Lindy here has been unable to do a job. But maybe she can't be blamed. She's not an IT specialist nor a financial systems person. Somebody has put her there, and that's it. I think, and I'm sure comrades here can make their own, but I'm sure that overall, as we round it off, we are left more with a sense that it's like kuyadlalwa. But not serious. I just don't get it. From the first one, where decisions were made, right up to where we are now. I would want to give the minister to respond, but I see Ross, you have.
Thank you, Chair. Just in closing, just a very small remark with regards to the responsibility of the procurement officer dealing with these massive contracts in terms of the financial implications and also the amounts that we've dealt with. I think as a Scopa committee, we should really engage with the procurement office as well, because there was a huge responsibility in the procurement office to also look into these contracts. It was not properly concluded. Thank you for the time.
Okay. All right. Comrade Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to the members of the committee for a really robust engagement on this project. I think Scopa does our constitution a great service, and I think the attention you pay to the detail of the report submitted without sounding flattering or condescending actually justifies the high offices you occupy in our public institutions. We are the better because of that engagement, because you point us to the direction towards which we need to move. Let me start, Chairperson, by saying we are here because of 2 reasons. On the one hand, it's the failure of internal controls and accountability with regard to this project. But on the other hand, it's the robustness of our internal audit. which uncovered these problems and put them to the fore. I think we need to pay due credit to the internal audit executive and the internal audit committee for their steadfastness, their independence in raising these issues and refusing to do anything other than pointing to the weaknesses in the system and ensuring that necessary action is taken to address the matters that we now are settled with. I certainly am giving my attention to the report and the issues which have been raised in the report of the Internal Audit Executive and the Audit Committee. I have had several meetings with them, as well as with the Director General, to address these matters. Hence the interventions that the Director General referred to earlier, which include appointing to act somebody with requisite skill and who would be able to dedicate 100% of the time to the IFMS program, the suspension of all payments until we are satisfied that the internal controls have been properly established. We will pay attention to the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer to ensure that it plays the role it has to play in relation to this and other projects. We will ensure that as soon as possible we find a permanent person to head the IFMS project, and we will also ensure that as speedily as possible the forensic investigation is instituted so that we can get to the bottom of the matters before us arising from the report. The question will always arise with regard to the conduct of Deloitte, and quite evidently we need to pay attention to that. I have directed the Director General to write to the Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors to report this matter officially and request IRPA to institute an inquiry as to whether the conduct of Deloitte was actually consistent with professional conduct required of an audit firm. Given the email which they sent to the DDG Corporate Service and the report which they submitted and the grounds on which that report has been wholly rejected, with a resolution on our part that we are not going to pay for such a shoddy work because we believe they could have done a better job. And I think what compromised the work they did was the mere fact that they sought that assurance, that guarantee that we must give them that they will in future get business from the Treasury. So all of those and perhaps more, I think, arising from the forensic investigation, it is my understanding that the Hawks have also communicated to the DG that they are investigating the aspects of this matter. And arising out of all of that, there will therefore be requisite action against anybody who may be found to have acted wrongfully. But just to comment briefly on a few things, and I will not be long, Chairperson. It is our intention to get to the bottom of this matter. I think there is no doubt about it. We apologize for where we have failed, I think, to answer adequately to the committee. And we will act with urgency to get to the bottom of the matter. There clearly was a failure of internal controls and accounting responsibilities in regard to this. And we are going to re-establish those internal controls and ensure that there are relevant structures and people to account for the work that has to be done by in relation to the IFMS, because it remains an important project to be done. Now, when cabinet memoranda are submitted to cabinet, they don't come with detailed project plans, because cabinet takes an executive decision. Such detailed project plans would have been submitted to relevant DG's committees. They would have gone through them and approved them. And so cabinet takes executive decisions. Sufficient information is provided to cabinet. And so the cabinet itself, yes, will have been provided with a detailed memo, but it would not have received a very detailed supporting documentation in the form of a project plan that explains how the project is going to unfold right up to implementation and conclusion. And that's why the accounting officers, who are the directors general of the respective institutions, are the ones ultimately who account for the projects that are being implemented. And so we at Treasury take responsibility for any lapses which have happened in this regard, and as I have indicated, we promise to get to the bottom of the matter so that where there are resources which have been lost and need to be recovered, they can be recovered, and where anybody needs to be acted against, relevant legal action is undertaken. But I want to say, Chairperson, all of what happened notwithstanding, it must not erode the trust and the integrity of the nation in the National Treasury as an institution. Because this was one lapse in an institution that manages a whole range of very huge programs and finances of the state. Yes, one will put a dent on the trust, but overall, the Treasury does its work to the best of its ability, supported by very well-skilled public officials who every day try their very best to serve the nation with everything that they've got. It is important that the National Treasury continues to role model competent, prudent program management and financial management, as well as accountability. And this is precisely why we should take this program very, very seriously. to learn what has happened from this program, to correct the mistakes, ensure that they do not happen again in the future. There was a question asked about the continued use of consultants. And it's a matter that over time we are going to overcome, because there are areas by whose nature you would find you need to have more consultants, because the service or the function offered there is perhaps seasonal, and therefore you don't need a permanent capacity, or for a variety of reasons. But it is important for us.
Right, that was Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba speaking to the Standing Committee on Public Accounts in Parliament. And of course, Scopa has called National Treasury in to provide answers about the integrated financial management system. That is the technical term for the system that was meant to centralize all government payments. But there are concerns about mismanagement. There are concerns that payments done through the system also do not meet the requirements, and that the system lacked some internal controls. What he's saying is that Treasury will take responsibility for any of these lapses that happened before his time, but he says that anyone found guilty will be dealt with, and resources will be realigned, anything to fix what happened here. But he's saying it is one lapse from Treasury that
by South African homegrown black audit firms. And some of these, in the 96%, have up to 120-year contracts. I fail to believe that I can remain independent and give you an independent audit if I have a 120-year contract with you. And that is why the Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors came up with the report they produced last year, as part of which they recommended the mandatory audit firm rotation principle, so that we try to introduce that principle of audit firm rotation among businesses in South Africa to give all firms a chance. This was introduced at Transnet with great success. For the first time you saw around 2011 the emergence of at least 3 big black firms, Sizwe Nsaluba Gobodo, Nkonki, as well as Sikela Xabisa. But unless we introduce these, because it becomes a vicious cycle, you don't give them work, they can't hire more chartered accountants and forensic auditors, they therefore can't get work because they don't have capacity, and therefore it just becomes a vicious cycle. But you can reverse the cycle by giving them work, so that they can hire more capacity, so that they can participate in these spaces which are ordinarily not occupied by black and female-owned firms. And that is why the entire concept of procurement strategy in government ought to be reimagined, so that it doesn't only relate to the procurement of goods, but it also relates to the procurement of services, such as audit services, legal services, and other professional services. And that is where you are able to inject change directly in the economy and effect that economic transformation that brings new players into the party. That must be done not just to increase the numbers of black consultants, but to increase the opportunities for black firms to even obtain business in the private sector. Because the more government can demonstrate confidence in these firms, the more they can deliver to government, the more all other firms, including private firms, can have confidence in the services they provide and can procure their services. So we have a responsibility. And I think the entire Treasury, therefore, in relation to the IFMS, needs to bring together a comprehensive response to how we are going to address the matters that have been raised as a result of the IFMS, in such a manner that we can continue to reap the benefits of the project, of the system, at the same time as we eliminate the slippages and the weaknesses in the system that have created the problems that we are now saddled with. It must be the responsibility ultimately of the executive authority and the accounting general. So the buck stops with me. And I take full responsibility for what has to happen in order to ensure that the problems that are here are properly addressed. I have received the DG's full commitment to also taking decisive measures to addressing these. And we will do that. I hope we will not come back to Scopa again to face the grilling we face today as a result of these reports, and that in the future we should be able to report to you the decisive steps we have taken in order to address this. You have requested some more additional information on certain things, including on what was the original cost submitted to Cabinet in 2002 when the project was approved, and other information, additional information you have requested. We will submit that information as a follow-up, and will update the committee on the additional steps that we are taking in order to address the weaknesses which have been identified. I must, in conclusion, Chairperson, thank both the committee, but also thank our internal audit mechanisms. I must thank them again. I think they have done what is expected of them. They swept nothing under the carpet. They put everything to the fore. We are sitting here because of the work they did. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Comrade Minister. Well, we want to thank you and the DG. We're getting worried that it appeared as if we're not getting time. Actually, fate had conspired that we should not meet even this week because of activities here in Parliament. But thankfully, the Speaker's office was able to grant us a deviation from, so to speak, that we meet. DG, I think some of the information that we have requested, check on them. And once your forensic audit work has been done and you've decided what to do in relation to its recommendation, I'm sure we can have another engagement that should assist to then clear everything in terms of what must have happened. Thanks to the internal audit team as well. I mean, you know, when I was reading the letter written by the chairperson of the audit committee, I was very impressed with the substance and the quality in which it was written. That is what we want, and that is what we expect from National Treasury all the time. Comrades, tomorrow it's South African Express. Ross, Kekane, you are the two comrades who are responsible for taking us through. DG, I received your report on the 30 days payment. I think we may decide whether maybe we need an engagement so you can come and take us through. That time it will not be like this. You will be our friend, because we'll be plotting with you to identify those who are doing wrong and then and then call them. I think we also have you on deviations. We're just trying to sort out one or two things around dates, because some problem arose with one, I think the SIU. So we're trying to see if we can bring you a bit earlier on that particular day, but I think Ntombi and Ben will liaise with you. On deviations in government, just a broad picture of how your colleagues and other officials are able to say, here's a tender of 20 million, but then it later on becomes 40 million and meander around and all that kind of stuff. We want to have a complete picture so that we can do our work appropriately. Comrades, thanks very much. Thanks very much.